Right. Good evening, Ottawa. I will be talking about Chapter 6, Question 6.1. And so in this, I will answer in the paper the egocentric and sociocentric self and personhood in Japan and America, as well as answer the question of how does the concept of personhood vary from society to society as my main focus. So we'll begin. How does the concept of personhood vary from society to society? So in the beginning of Chapter 1, or 6.1, we learn how the concept of personhood has a different meaning in different societies. People use their names to stand out and overall form an individual self. So, for instance, me, I'm Ivan. I form my own persona and who I am off of that and separate myself from society like that. And then the point is to separate yourself from society and everything as a distinct member. Now, the names that we are given represent the aspect of self, and because we are given the names from birth all the way till death, and they are what separate us and make us individuals the most for Americans. Now, for other people, it's not only the name that separates them, but also their place of origin, and that is the case for the Moroccans, as we learn in the chapter. Because when they introduce themselves to other people from different places, they give their name of their family and their place of origin. What I learned from the Moroccan self aspect is that they use family name and place of origin to individualize themselves, so the concept of personhood depends on the society. For example, Americans may go from being student to employee to father and still be the same person and consider themselves an individual and highly individualistic at that point, as stated in the book on page 227. And in other societies, this is not the case. For other culture societies like the Gitscan, if I'm pronouncing that right, where the person is not conceived as a separate entity from the group or role or status in society. So personhood in society overall varies because of people's beliefs in society and roles and status, as well as the ways they perceive themselves and how others perceive them as well. Now, the egocentric and sociocentric self. Yikes. The egocentric view of life is what Americans have used, and it is a view that each person is defined as a replica of all humanity and capabilities of being independent from others overall. The individual is the center of awareness and is distinct whole against others. This view also means that any individual is free to determine what they are in society and work their way to their desired societal status. This view also places a higher value on individualism and self-reliance. The sociocentric view is opposite of the egocentric because the sociocentric view is about context. So here's a quote from page 228. The self exists as an entity only within the concrete situation or role occupied by the person, according to the book. In the sociocentric view, there is no self that possesses qualities such as beauty, integrity, and generosity and is individual. These qualities apply in social situations for those with sociocentric views of life. For example, rather than saying that a man is generous, a sociocentric person would say something like, he gives money to his friends, and it will work for other situations like that. Finally, personhood in Japan and America. So the Japanese have a more sociocentric view, and when Japanese talk about the concept of self, most would involve family and members of social groups rather than actual individuality, like the Americans use when talking about the concept of self. The Japanese concept of self is expressed through their language and ways of speaking. The Japanese do not use personal pronouns such as I and you. Instead, they use up to 6 different personal pronouns, and the girls use up to 5, which they learn from a very young age, like 5. For them, the self is defined relative to the social interactions they have. So Japanese people use something they call polite speech in their language, and it establishes the social intimacy of speaker and listener. Now, when they speak with someone who is a higher social rank than them, the speaker must linguistically acknowledge his or her inferiority to the other, which I think is odd, but, they have their own ways. This creates problems for Japanese advertisers, and they solve the problem by using low-status ranked people to issue the commands. So, and I read in the book it says, like, clowns and random people and all that. It's pretty interesting, honestly. So these styles of personhood differ from the Americans and their approach to social interactions. Sometimes the Americans come off as aggressive, and in contrast, the goal for the Japanese is to come off as more of a calm speaker. Americans also believe in taking charge and finding ways to stand up from others, and the Japanese strive towards characterizing social interaction by restraint and reserve. So I'd say choosing their words a little more wisely than we do, and really thinking about what they say. But yeah, that's chapter 6.1. So thank you for listening.